Hello and welcome to Viewpoint. I'm Volodymyr Solohub. Join me now to discuss the problems of the amputees and their difficulties with getting the artificial limbs in Ukraine is the representative of an NGO, pidmoga.info, Mr. Vladyslav Volchkov. Mr. Volchkov, welcome to Viewpoint.
Thank you.
Mr. Volchkov, your NGO helps the people who lost their limbs in the war in eastern Ukraine, both military and civilians. And the war has been raging for almost 2 years now. Can you tell us, during this time, how many people you have managed to help and what motivated to create your NGO?
Mm-hmm. Well, our NGO has been created in 2014 in August. The head of the NGO, whose name is Volodymyr, he is a user of prosthesis himself. So when injured soldiers, veterans, started to arrive to hospitals, he decided that he could help them, and he actually went to the hospitals and supported them, trying them to get prosthesis and helping them to get the prosthesis, and encouraging them, telling them that they could live active, full lives, even though they lost limbs.
I understand that your website is like an informational platform for the people, for the amputees. You can get the legal advice there, you can get some medical advice. So what exactly do you do, and how exactly you help these people?
Well, actually, we started with personal support, but then we decided that we need more systematic changes in the prosthetic industry of Ukraine. So we focused on advocacy and on reforming procedural and legislative frameworks of the industry. So now our main focus is to produce and promote reforms in the industry, in the whole sphere.
So what kind of reforms we're talking about here?
Mostly legislative. We're talking about amendments to legislation that concerns prosthetics.
So can you tell us briefly about these changes? What needs to be done, and what kind of laws are there currently in place which protect or should be protecting the rights of the amputees? And because obviously this is for the first time Ukraine faced this huge problem of huge amount of people losing their limbs.
Well, the problem has been like always. Just it was not, the society was not so focused on the problem of, like now, veterans who lost limbs. But there are many people still in Ukraine who are not veterans and who require prosthesis. We're talking about hundreds of thousands of people who need prosthesis and orthotics also. And around 14,000 people who actually lost limbs in Ukraine and require prosthesis.
Mr. Volchkov, can you tell us how easy it is for someone who unfortunately lost a limb to get a prosthesis in Ukraine?
Well, it is a process. It is complicated. I'll start from the beginning. In Ukraine, you can obtain prosthesis at the cost of the state. So according to the law, the state must provide finances for that. And the Ministry of Social...
So basically this is sort of a social guarantee.
Yes, this is covered by the state, and the Ministry of Social Policy is responsible for that. But as a Ukrainian ministry, it has all the relevant problems of our state. It's the bureaucracy, ineffective procedures, and corruption. We even have a letter from the State Regulatory Service, of the head of the State Regulatory Service, and it clearly says that corruption in the Ministry of Social Policy is a barrier for people to obtain high-quality prosthesis.
So when we're talking about the corruption, what exactly are you talking here about? The ministry is not providing enough finances for the companies which produce the prosthesis, or you have to pay bribes in order to get the prosthesis?
No, the schemes that are there, for instance, I can tell you about the scheme that was actually abolished for now. It is so-called certification of components. It is like an additional payment for the companies, for the producers, to introduce their components, parts of the prosthesis into the market. So it imposed bureaucratic and financial barriers to that, and we advocated for its abolishment for a long time. So after it was abolished, immediately foreign companies started to enter the market of Ukraine. Like, for instance, British companies called Steeper entered the market right after the certification was abolished. Also, later we supported, provided informational support for other companies, like Touch Bionics from the USA and Iceland from Osur from Iceland, and the Japanese company Imasen. So lots of new.
So basically, these foreign companies are now on the Ukrainian market. But does the law allow the ministry to pay the foreign companies for getting the prostheses for the amputees, for the Ukrainian amputees? Because obviously these prostheses are much more expensive than those produced by the Ukrainian company. So I would assume that the ministry, which provides for the free of charge prostheses for the amputees, they would rather pay these give this money to the Ukrainian companies rather than much more to the foreign companies. How does it work with the foreign companies?
That scheme is a little bit different. There are the companies that actually manufacture the prostheses out of components are Ukrainian. So the prosthetists, they are masters of prosthesis. Is not just it's not a car that you can just assemble and let go. It is like a piece of art, because every person, every amputee is different.
So they are basically custom made.
Yeah.
So basically what the Ukrainian companies do is they put together the prostheses out of the spare parts which are being brought by the foreign companies. So again, the law allows Ukrainian companies to purchase these.
Yeah, but it is over-regulated, and this over-regulation provides for possible corruption schemes. Of course, there are companies in Ukraine who produce components, but it is only developing. The quality so far is good, but maybe fits for primitive prostheses, not for complicated ones. And very often, prostheses of upper limbs of hands, then you require some high technology to produce the components.
Mr. Volchkov, can you tell us how long does it take for a person who lost a limb to wait in order to get from the state, from the government, the good quality prosthesis free of charge?
Well, it depends.
I would assume that's a very complicated process.
It is quite a complicated process. Well, right now, for the veterans receive quite enough attention from everybody, from the governmental executives, from the prosthetists, because the public pressure is high. So they do not have to wait for a long time. Maybe a couple of months, like a month to gather all the documents required, then to produce the manufacture the prosthesis. Like recently, we followed up one veteran. Well, I think it took a couple of months for him to get the prosthesis.
Yeah,
it is a little bit more complicated for people who are not veterans.
Mr. Volchkov, just recently, your NGO, in cooperation with other partners, you launched a project called Save the Heroes, where you had a photo shoot of the people who are amputees, who lost their limbs. So the photo shoot was already of these people with their prostheses. What motivated you to do this photo shoot?
Well, there are two basic ideas in this project. First of all, it is a motivational one, because it is very important for people who lost limbs to know that they are still people, they are still living their lives, and they can be active. They can live full lives. And the veterans who were shot for this project actually represent people who are still active, who are still living, willing to live. And they are beautiful. And this is one of the main messages. Well, another one is another idea of the project is to raise awareness about the problems, that the problem exists. That there are people who lost limbs in the war, that there are people who lost limbs like normal, just citizens of Ukraine, who are not veterans, but they still have problems of adapting to the new life.
Who participated in this project? Was it just the veterans or also the civilians?
No, the models are only veterans. This concerns only veterans now.
How difficult or how easy it was for you to convince the veterans to participate in this project?
It was not hard. Well, they were quite willing.
So they were willing to do this.
Yeah.
And how long and where the exhibition will take place?
How long and
the exhibition of these pictures?
It will take around a month, and I don't remember the address.
But this will be in Ukraine.
This will be, yeah, it will be in Kiev, yeah.
Understood. Well, it looks like some very interesting and important project here. Mr. Vladyslav Volchkov, the representative of an NGO who's helping the Ukrainian amputees, pidmoga.info. We were discussing the efforts of an NGO to increase the awareness of the problems of the amputees in Ukraine and finding ways to help them. I'm Volodymyr. Solohub. Thank you for watching Viewpoint.